This is the brand new Mercedes-AMG C63 with over 500 kilowatts and over 1,000 Newton meters of torque. But the most important number? The number 4. That's how many cylinders there are under the hood. Yes, this is the world's most powerful 4-cylinder engine in production, but more importantly, this is the C63 S E-Performance. Yep, it's a hybrid, and we're going to find out how it drives here in Spain. Just how powerful is it? The full system of the C63 S E-Performance is rated for 500 kilowatts and a whopping 1,000 Newton meters of torque. But remember, this is a hybrid. 350 kilowatts comes purely from the 2-liter 4-cylinder, which is a massive amount. Yes, it is a turbo, and 4 bangers making that much power would normally come with an epic amount of lag, but not here. Mercedes has outfitted the car with turbos that are electrically spooled, spun up to RPM almost instantly to ensure amazing throttle response. But the real instant juice is going to come from that electric motor, mounted at the rear axle but able to drive all 4 wheels through the C63ES's standard all-wheel drive system. 150 kilowatts is what that electric motor can provide. Now, driving that rear electric motor is a 6.1 kilowatt-hour battery pack. That's not really big in the grand scheme of plug-in hybrids and EVs, but it is kind of big when it comes to losing storage space. You can see in here there's a bit of a ridge at the back of the trunk, and that's where your battery pack is situated. Now, being at the rear means that actually helps give this car a better weight balance than the outgoing C63S. It's almost a perfect 50-50 balance, and having that weight over the rear gives us a really nice balance to the corners, which we're going to find out when we hit the racetrack soon. A small battery pack again, so not a lot of range, but it does add a fair bit of weight to the car. Between the hybrid system and the battery pack and everything else, this car is a little bit more than 200 to 300 kilograms heavier than the outgoing car. How's it feel on the track? Well, it's time to go find out. All right, we are out on track now in the AMG C63 S E-Hybrid, and we're starting on the track because why not? Why not start on the track? This is a great track too. We are at Ascari in the south of Spain, and it's a beautiful place, beautiful part of the world. But a really beautiful track too, not only in terms of the aesthetic features. This is definitely a premium race course with high-end stone and lots of other stuff like that, even in the pit area. But also just a really great track from its character. A lot of elevation changes, a lot of quick, tight, twisty turns like this, leading to longer, faster flowing corners. It's a really good challenge for any car. A good challenge for a driver too, especially with walls like that one right next to the racetrack. And certainly a very good challenge for a car like this, the new C63. But so far so good. We are in, of course, Sport Plus mode, which means we've got maximum engine noise now, and it's hard to know how much of that is synthesized and how much of that is actually coming from the 4-cylinder. I'd say it's probably a pretty even mix of the two, but I gotta say it sounds pretty all right. You get a nice little bassy kick there on every upshift. You can hear the engine rev matching. Overall, it sounds pretty all right. I'll just have to tell myself that it's not fake, it's a real noise. That's fine. Right now, I'm leaving the car in automatic mode. I might switch over to manual shifting later on if I'm feeling a little more racy, but it's doing a fine job picking the right gear at the right time. This is kind of a weird hybrid transmission. It is a 9-speed automatic, but it has a wet clutch, so it's almost like a mixture of sequential manual and automatic kind of combined together, like a motorcycle transmission almost in a car. It's a weird mix. On the track though, again, it's giving me really quick up and down shifts, and the programming is good enough that it's always picking the right gear for me so far. We'll see how it does when I get a little bit more racy, and more importantly, probably we'll see how it does when we're out there on the road a little bit later on. But we're starting to get to speed now. Car is up to temperature, and we're going to start to get a feel for things. You can maybe hear the tires talking to me. This is a car that likes to move around, certainly around this racetrack. Now, as we discussed earlier, this is quite a bit heavier than the outgoing C63, somewhere in the order of 300 kilograms more than before. That is a lot of weight, especially for a car of this size. And as we're picking up speed, going through this long banked corner, I can definitely feel it. There seems to be a fair bit of body roll, and a fair bit of movement under braking as well. The tires, you can hear again, are complaining. The car's moving around a lot. I feel like I could use maybe a little bit more grip, but I gotta say, the balance is remarkably good. The car is doing a nice job of doing what I want it to do, whether that's thanks to the 4MATIC all-wheel drive system, the weight balance that I've got thanks to the battery pack in the rear of the car, the torque vectoring system, and of course the stability control. All of that's working nicely in harmony. I don't really feel much of any of it. The car is just really reacting to do what I want it to do. So when it starts to understeer in a corner like that, when I was a little bit too hot in there coming down off camber, that would tend to push the front in your average all-wheel drive car, like the Subarus that I typically am racing, that kind of thing. But really all I had to do was give it a little bit more input to the steering wheel and honestly a little bit more throttle. Tuck the nose right in there. Did a really nice job. It felt good. And that's impressive for a car that, again, has gained a lot of weight since the last generation. It is moving a lot, and again, I can feel it in that body roll. But in terms of balance and poise, this is nice. Last really tight hairpin before we get on the straight. Now you can maybe see on the dashboard here, it's blinking at me. It's saying boost, and that is not reminding me that this is a turbocharged car. This is telling me that that is the appropriate time for me to put my foot all the way to the floor and take advantage of the e-boost hybrid system in the car. When you get in the C63, you can actually go into the touchscreen here and choose what track you're at. And this car has been pre-configured for the Ascari circuit where we're at now. And it will automatically give you some coaching and tell you when is the most optimal time for you to use the maximum power available to you from that 6 kilowatt-hour battery pack that's sitting in the trunk. So under maximum acceleration, you've got 150 kilowatts of power available to you, but only for a couple of seconds. So the car will tell you when the best time for you to use it. It'll flash, it'll bring up a white indicator that'll say boost. That means you need to get ready. And then when it's time for you to use it, it'll start to blink at you. And to engage that boost mode, all you need to do is put your foot flat to the floor, kick through the detent that's underneath the pedal, which you would typically use in an automatic transmission car to say, hey, dum-dum, downshift a gear or two, please. And it will instead give you maximum power out of the hybrid system. Now with over 500 kilowatts of power, that's a lot on your right foot, and you would expect that coming from a tiny little 2-liter to be pretty laggy. Out here it's actually felt pretty good as I'm making little corrections mid-corner, adding or removing power to get the car to do what I want it to. It seems like we've got pretty good throttle response, but honestly, a racetrack isn't the best place to check the actual real-world throttle response of a car to see just how laggy it is, because when you're on a track, you can always spot your apex, you always know when you're going to want to get back on the gas, and so it's not the best time to figure out just how it is when you're trying to do something unexpected. So let's sadly leave Ascari behind, which is honestly the kind of racetrack that not many C63 S owners are likely to actually ever take their cars, and head out onto the roads of Spain to see just how good this thing is as a day-to-day driver. All right, we're pulling out of Ascari onto the real world, the real roads in southern Spain, and we're in comfort mode right now. The C63 S has a whopping 8 different drive modes, which can be personalized as well, so you can customize things like suspension, throttle response, engine noise, transmission responsiveness, and all sorts of things, both through the touchscreen here in the middle, and also through a pair of knobs. Well, one's a knob, one's a couple of buttons on the bottom of the steering wheel here, which honestly feel a little bit cheap and plastic given the presumably rather expensive nature of this car. But through the right one here, I can toggle from comfort, which we're in now, sport up to sport plus, and then into full-on track mode, or I can skirt my way to the left down to the electrified, the hold range mode, basically to stop from decharging the batteries. And I can keep going down to my individual mode, and there's even an ice and snow mode on the far left. So lots of choices there. And then on the left, I've got quick toggle, so I can turn the engine noise on and off if I want to. Yeah, definitely a noticeable difference there. And then the other button down here is to change the suspension from comfort mode into sport, and again, cycling through the different options there. So lots of customization and a whole lot of information coming at me from all over, both from the central touchscreen here as well as a big virtual gauge cluster behind the steering wheel, and then a massive augmented reality heads-up display, which is floating in space ahead of me on the windscreen. On here, I've got my throttle application, the G meters on here. I've got separate indications of power coming from EV and coming from the gasoline-powered engine too. Plus, of course, range information. I've got my navigation going on here. I've got a little thing blinking at me telling me that I'm going 1 kilometer an hour over the speed limit, so I'm going to slow down a little bit. And all sorts of other information. It's a little bit overwhelming, to be honest with you, but thankfully turning the HUD off is a really easy thing to do when you just want to get the experience of driving. Now, out here on the road in comfort mode, it's just a reasonably comfortable experience. It is a little bit stiffer. It feels a little bit more bouncy than a typical C-Class, than the normal one. It also hindered somewhat by the somewhat uncomfortable sport seats. They're great on the track, but out here on the road, there's not a lot of cushioning in here. I think this could get a little bit painful after a couple of hours in the saddle. But honestly, on the track, that feels so good that I might be inclined to live with that slight penalty. All right, so we're going to dial from Comfort up to Sport and Sport Plus and get on the power here a little bit, and it's pretty good. The throttle response on this, I was mentioning on track, it's a little bit hard to tell, but yeah, it accelerates really quickly. It's kind of hard to tell how much of that is coming from the hybrid system, which is providing, again, that roughly 150 kilowatt of power instantaneously. And also, we've got the electronic turbocharger, which is being spun up by the electronic system of the car to give you more instant throttle response. You can feel a little bit of a shift in power there, which is probably the turbo coming in just a little bit later than the electronic system, the EV hybrid system that's driving the rear axle. But overall, this has got a really good throttle response. Again, we've got a lot of power from a tiny little 4-cylinder engine. And normally you would expect seconds worth of a turbo lag, but it's really, really drivable. Out here on the road, it's a lot of fun, and this is the perfect kind of thing for a little 2-lane road just like this one where you might want to pass a car, you don't have a lot of lead-in time. Really good throttle response, get on the power, and it immediately goes. Now, the differential setup in this is interesting. Again, the electric motor is only driving the rear axle, but it can actually drive all 4 wheels because it can send power back through the drive shaft up to the center differential, which is right about here, and drive the front wheels too. So you can have full all-wheel drive even in full EV mode. But it's worth pointing out that this car really wasn't designed to be driven far on only the batteries. Again, it's only a 6.1 kilowatt hour battery pack, so that's pretty tiny. And they say range is somewhere around 15 kilometers. So again, that's not going to get you very far. What they did though was they optimized the battery pack to give quick discharges of energy. So like when we were on the track there, you can get that boost mode for a couple seconds a lap and maybe shave your lap time by a couple of tenths. But it is really interesting that despite the fact that the motor is on the rear axle, it can still drive the front wheels through the center differential and the rear differential to give you full all-wheel drive for those 15 kilometers worth if you want to, say, idle out of your housing community very quietly without waking up your neighbors. You can do that and cruise through perfectly silently, or even go through a city with reduced emissions if you need to without putting anything in the air other than a little bit of transmission whine, perhaps. Now we're back down in comfort mode, and I'm getting a chance to feel how this kind of funky transmission works out here on the street. Again, it's got a wet clutch, a little bit like a motorcycle, combined with the 9-speed automatic. And on the track, it did really well. The quick shifts, when I wanted them, most of the time I left it to its own devices though, and it was the right gear at the right time. I didn't feel like I needed to override it, which is definitely a step above other AMGs that I've driven in the past, which on the track always felt a little bit lagging behind. This one seemed to be really aggressive in its transmission programming, picking gears ahead of what was actually needed. Then overall, it kept me pretty happy there. Out here on the road, of course, anticipating shift needs is a little bit secondary to smoothness, and it's doing a really great job coming from a complete stop and accelerating smoothly away. Again, I've got the help of the electronic system, the EV system, and the rear axle to help get the car moving in the first place. But the transmission is doing a nice job of just slipping from one gear to the next. I'm idling along here, waiting for the speed limit to increase a little bit higher than the 60 kilometers we're going through right now. And it's smooth and comfortable and everything you'd want a C-Class to be, basically. It doesn't feel more rough, more jerky, or anything like that. You never know that you could be on the racetrack doing what I was doing just a couple of hours ago. It's great. I'm also getting a lot of help from the MBUX infotainment system here. This is the same thing we've seen, I think it was debuted on the EQS and a lot of other modern Mercedes. I've got augmented reality pop-ups here, which are helping me a lot through all the roundabouts that are going on here, plus navigation that's up here on the gauge cluster too as well, and on the heads-up display. So I've got lots of different ways to not get myself lost, and so far I've done pretty okay on that front. But the touchscreen experience is really great. MBUX is a lot of information and a lot of different screens, but they've done a nice job of tucking things away in menus in a nice way that makes it easy and intuitive without always having to feel like you're jumping between screens. The navigation is kind of the central experience. Then from there you can go into home, change the settings, and dive through without getting lost, which is a lot easier to do in a lot of other luxury cars with a lot of different features going on. Everything from climate control is always quickly accessible, navigation and media are quickly accessible. And then if you need to go through and change the RGB settings over your interior LEDs, you can get to that point if you want to as well. So final thoughts on the Mercedes-AMG C63 S E-Performance. Overall, I'm really impressed. You can definitely feel that additional weight again, somewhere north of 300 kilograms added here compared to the previous generation. There's no way to hide that. You can absolutely feel it on the track. But with the rear steering, which is now standard on every C63, plus the weight distribution and all the magic that's happening in the active stability control systems and everything else, makes it feel like a really fun car to be on the track. It moves around a lot. The tires are certainly complaining a lot, but ultimately it does everything that you want it to do. And when you do find those limits, it communicates them very clearly, which makes it a fun toy to toss around on the track. And a great learning tool as well. Plus, we've got the coaching of the e-boost system, which is a little bit of fun. They keep talking about how that's inspired by Formula One. It's a little bit different for Lewis Hamilton, but ultimately, I think anything like that will definitely help to get buyers of this car a little bit more excited about their things. Now, when it comes to driving here on the road, again, I have very few complaints. It's a comfortable interior. The seats are, again, a little bit punishing, but I think for me, if I were buying this thing, I would want it to feel sporty. And they certainly do. I've got the Burmester sound system. I've got everything in here that I would want from a high-end Mercedes-Benz. And I think it is a car that will be commanding a pretty high price premium. As of now, they have not given us a full price for this car, but it's going to be expensive. And honestly, I think it's going to be worth it. I can't help but be impressed by the engineering in the C63S, but we want to know, what do you think? Are you impressed? Is the increase in power and technology a good trade-off for all that weight? And is the C63S special enough to warrant what will surely be a stiff premium? I hope you let us know down in comments, and then like and subscribe for more videos just like this.